Hi, everyone. This is Joni McGarry. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sharing today a conversation with my good friend, Adam Quirk. Adam lives here in Bloomington, Indiana, where I live. And we met, gosh, maybe 12 years ago when we were both starting up businesses here. He was starting a distillery, and I was getting ready, although I didn't know it at the time, to start a mail order brownie business. We knew each other through that area of life for many years, but then reconnected again in earnest when I put a post on Facebook saying, "Is there anyone in Bloomington who wishes to have a conversation about liberty?" And that doesn't seem like a very radical question, although when you live in a college town, sometimes it can be a question that's not often posed. Adam immediately said, "I'm interested in having that conversation." And we started to get together for coffee just to talk about ideas and how we saw the world. It's been a wonderful friendship. So he's going to talk to me today about his journey from Indiana to Brooklyn, Brooklyn to Indiana, how his political and worldviews followed that travel arc, and what he thinks about how to live a very good life. He's a father, he's a husband, he's a great member of the community, and a very smart writer, very smart entrepreneur, and just a thoughtful guy. I think you're going to enjoy this. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Joni.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Tell us what you'd like the listeners to know.
Sure. Human man living in Indiana, United States of America. Um, yeah, that's the gist of it. Father, husband, business owner, business starter. Guess I'm on my third real business. Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Newly formed um, Christian and politically converted. So we could probably talk about some of that stuff.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we met many years ago when you were starting a distillery, and we intersected. When I was interested in possibly, working with the business or helping with the business, and then went on to form my own business. But we stayed in touch. And we reconnected, I think, over a post that I made on maybe Facebook saying, "Is anyone interested in having a conversation?" What was it, about liberty? Or
I
I don't
think
even know
so.
if I think it was pre-pandemic even.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. It was very vanilla in retrospect. It wasn't like, hey, let's go, form a radical group. But it was, yeah, it was in Bloomington. It was, it stood out to me.
yeah, and then you said, "I'm interested," and I thought, "Wow, well, that's exciting," because, for people who don't live here in Bloomington, um, Bloomington is a college town. It tends to be, more progressive, I would say, politically, and I don't unless you speak out, you don't really know a lot of people who might have a different view. So I was really excited that you said, "I'd like to have that conversation." And you and I started having coffee, and we've talked about a lot of things. And the reason I wanted to talk to you on this podcast is because you're really smart. You've had an interesting arc in your life, and how you've changed your mind on some things. And I think you have picked up the tools of how to really live an authentic, good life in this crazy, increasingly digital, increasingly frenetic environment. So, if you want to start like with a little history and what your arc was, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I was definitely one of those progressive people, and I think we should try to reclaim that word because it's not, it's not progressing in the right direction. So I would
Agreed.
whatever's going on, I wouldn't call it progress. So that party needs to be renamed. But I, I grew up in Evansville, which is southern Indiana, right on the Kentucky border. Pretty conservative in all ways, not just like traditional values, but also not a whole lot of innovation in business or the way of life.
So, not like a tech hub.
Not surprisingly, tech hub. Yeah, unless you're doing coal processing, which that's probably not super innovative either. But I ended up moving to New York City and lived there for most of my 20s. And um, I just felt like I needed to be somewhere bigger and better, I
Hmm.
guess. That's
Hmm.
probably just the instinct. um, and I learned a lot there. I had a lot of fun. I was doing tech stuff. I was a webmaster, is what they called that in the mid 2000s. Um, and yeah, politically, I would say I was always like a center left, um, maybe humanist. I don't know what the right word is, but I've always felt like humans are the best invention in the universe. And even before I believed that someone invented us,
Mhm.
I I thought that, hey, we are definitely the best thing going on, and I don't understand why people don't like humans. And it seemed like that was um, like the undercurrent of a lot of media was, people are bad, nature is good, which, it's sort of a weird, doesn't make much sense.
Well,
We're
because
part,
humans are part of nature. Um, were you
yeah.
th were you thinking this way even before the onslaught of all this, messaging and AI and, transhumanism? It sounds like you were really thinking this years and years ago about humans. Like it was on your radar. Like, I never really even thought about it until recently.
I would say, no, it wasn't always that way. I would say mid 2000s
Mhm,
probably is when I kind of started thinking this way. Um, and I'm not sure what did that. I was a big fan of Ron Paul in like the mid 2000s,
mhm,
and that was my initial introduction to libertarianism, the concept, um, and just the idea that people should be able to choose their own path and what they do with their lives.
mhm,
That seemed inherently true.
mhm.
Um,
And this is when you were living in Brooklyn?
yep,
Mhm,
yeah, yeah. And I didn't do any too much like activism for that campaign. I did, some online stuff, but yeah, a friend of mine we were talking about that and how great it was, and in retrospect, I wish I would have done more to support him at that time. But
yeah, I'm not sure they would no, I'm not sure the powers that be would have ever let him rise to what he should have risen to given the groundswell of, support and how many
yeah,
people got on the Ron Paul revolution. So you did discovering him and starting to think about things in terms of human liberty, did that sort of start to change your way of thinking?
yeah, I did. I think I started to see him in contrast to the rest of the media landscape, and I started to see the moral relativism that was prevalent everywhere else, and maybe um, just the way that progress was sort of um, proclaimed to be like this linear thing.
Like always getting better and better and inexorably moving forward, like we must do it?
Uh huh. Yeah, I think that's right. Um, yeah, I became, I would say, disillusioned with like the media landscape,
Mhm,
and that's when around the same time I started doing more video online. I don't know if we've even ever talked about this, but I was a part of this small group in New York that was we were called the New York City Video Bloggers, which was a word that was kind of invented in 2005, and this was around the time some streaming services started, or not streaming, but posting videos online
mhm,
was
which
a
was
new
very
thing.
new, like, we never think about it now, but that's not always been a thing.
Yeah, so I started doing that in 2004 with this group, and then I started a subset of the video blogging group called New York City Video Blogging, and me and this guy Jay Dedman and Andrew Bear and a couple other guys kind of ran that, and um, we had this very heady view of the future of the internet where everyone could post their own truth and their own life, um, and that's what. So just as an aside, we had these meetups usually at like a bar or something, but sometimes we do it at the Apple Store down in Soho. They had like a nice sort of meeting room where you could display stuff up on the screen.
Oh, wow, so you met
So we
in
had
person, which is so great.
all of them were in
Yeah,
person. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, and this one meeting, it was like in May of 2005, a couple of the founders of YouTube, which wasn't anything at the time, it was a startup, came to the meetup and said, "Hey, we've got this cool thing we want to show you guys. It's called YouTube, and you can post your video directly to the website instead of at the time we were like having to transcode um, stuff from our DV tapes to digital, and then transcode it again and get it up on and post it on our blogs with like a little thumbnail. Everything was manual. And they were like, yeah, you just, upload it directly to the website. So that was mind blowing. So I uploaded one right while this guy was talking, and it's still up. It's like the seventh video ever posted to YouTube.
Can
And
I
it's
put a
just,
link to that in the show note?
yeah, it's throwaway footage from my camera. But um, anyway, that was a great time. And I guess to try to tie it back to my story here, I saw that there was two very distinct kinds of media. One was this sort of top down media that we were all used to and was telling me things, and this
Mhm,
other kind that was social. The
mhm,
social media where um, people were creating their own stuff, which went back well beyond video on the internet to desktop publishing and even publishing before that.
mhm.
But um, yeah, this is really rambly. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's not at all. I mean, first of all, to be in the mix with the beginning of YouTube, and to think about the fact that that was not that long ago. It really was not, and now we can't imagine a world without YouTube and without being able to instantly put our stuff up on the internet and to instantly have all that feedback and virtual interaction. And I think that that's actually something that plays into the central question of our time right now is because what you're describing and what I have lived through and more than you because I'm quite a bit older than you was actual real humanity
Yeah,
getting together for a meetup to talk about ideas, to actually
yeah,
talk about them and
yeah.
inventing new technology with a real optimism for
Yep.
what that could be and what it could be used for. And now, fast forward, how many years later, like not even 2 decades, and our lives are completely different. And we're veering, I think, perilously toward being plugged in all the time. I mean,
Mhm.
and I also feel that a lot of powerful forces have taken over these things that used to be, really, really promising. So I
Yeah.
don't. I find it very relevant to the situation we're in right now. What I'm interested in is during that time for you. Were you yet married and thinking about like starting a family, or did that happen after you moved back to Bloomington and Indiana? And let me just ask, like, what prompted you at that time? You're living this, like, what sounds like a pretty groovy life in New York City. No, seriously, like, you're doing all these very interesting things in tech, and you're making your way. What prompted you to start to turn your sights back toward moving home to Indiana, and setting a different course for yourself?
Yeah, so I met my wife, um, it was about a year and a half before we moved back, so, I guess '08, and, um, I mean, we both knew, like, within a few days or a week that we wanted to get married, so that
Oh,
was
of
pretty.
meeting each other?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we went on a run in, like, down to Prospect Park, and this was like maybe our third date or something, like a jog, and past this house, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool house. I could raise a family there." And she said something similar, like, "Oh yeah, if it was in Indiana, maybe." And we were both like, we knew pretty quickly that we were gonna get married.
And,
So
like, may I just say that you're still married and you have a beautiful family and you are happy, so that is such a great story. Was she from Indiana as well?
yeah, yeah. So we live like 6 blocks apart in Brooklyn, and she's from Fort Wayne, and I'm from Bloomington, or I'm from Evansville. So yeah, Bloomington's like halfway in between, which
Mhm.
was a good sort of landing place for us. Yeah, it's 15 years in September.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
So you moved back to Bloomington. Tell me how things are starting to change for you in terms of your worldview and your value system and, what happens along the way, because when I met you and when you met me, we weren't talking about these ideas at all. We were
right.
look, I mean, maybe we just weren't talking to each other about them, but we were starting businesses, we were in the community, and then something shifted. I know how it shifted for me, but something shifted for you.
Mhm. Well, the big shift for me was 2016. So I was firmly against Donald Trump because that's what everyone told me to do, and um, just generally believed, I guess, the consensus view that he was the devil, I guess.
Or maybe
And
anathema to all of your values,
yeah, that's
more
right.
like.
Yep. Yeah,
Because I
racist,
I s I see
Hitler.
you, yeah, I see you as more of a thinking person than, just accepting it, the fact that it's a two-dimensional cutout. I think it's more insidious than that, that the media can position somebody as those cartoonish things, but also as against everything that you really believe is good and true. Would that
Yeah.
feel right?
No, that's absolutely right, and in fact, that was the conversation I had. So after the election, I knew that my parents had voted for him, and we had a conversation maybe the day after or something, and, I was really upset, and I said, I can't believe it, but I just don't think we share the same values." And my dad was like, "Are you kidding me? Of course we share the same values." And he started, like, explaining why we share the same values, and I was like, "Oh, well, you're right. So I wonder how you voted for this guy, and I thought that he was like against all these values." Um,
That's a really
so that was
powerful response that your dad made. I
yeah,
mean,
it was
to
great.
open up the conversation in that way.
Yeah. Well, and that was a huge crack in, I guess, the armor that exposed the light. That's two metaphors that don't really work, but they're I started having to seek out some other information really about
Mhm.
like how this all happened and why half the country voted for this guy who was supposedly all these terrible like you said, the caricature.
Well, and how the media missed it.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's
I mean, leaving aside what anyone thinks about Trump because he is such a polarizing figure, and that doesn't even matter for the purposes of this conversation, who he is or how you feel about him. We had a country in which, the whole apparatus missed it.
hmm
'Cause that night, I mean, it was, I don't know if you watched The Returns, I remember that. It was a stunning
oh
night of
yeah,
television,
yeah,
and a real dislocation for a lot of people in the country, and I happen to think that led to kind of where we are now in terms of the inability for people to talk to each other.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, right, it was the seed of a lot of distrust of what you see
Mhm.
on TV
Sure.
because you could this very it was the sort of analog to that was the Biden Trump debate where he was so obviously unable to think, and
Mm.
they'd been telling us for months that he was the sharpest
Sharp as a
tool in the
tack.
drawer.
Yeah.
Sharp as tack. So I think for a lot of people that was probably like part two of the big.
Sure.
I mean, there was so many parts. COVID was the other.
Oh, it was
So
huge.
I mean, we could just fast forward to 2020. That was like the other big turning point for me. So I would say like 16 to 20, I was, um, that was when we started meeting occasionally, I think, talking about various libertarian ideas.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, and I'd
Which
never
seemed
been
like a
friends
really radical thing at the time, you know?
with it. I know. I mean, in Bloomington, it is because there's so much social pressure to fall in line. The more I
I
read
feel it.
about communist Russia, the more I feel like, oh, this is basically it. It's like if you don't put a Black Lives Matter sign in your storefront window, you're shunned. And then the really super on team whatever make their own sign and like put it on with shoe polish on their windows. So like that's what they did in Russia too. Like you could put the government sign up and that's like okay, but then if you make your own sign supporting the thing, you're like okay, you're really on the right team.
Oh, that's really interesting because I see it a lot here, and I
Yes,
saw
yeah,
it, post, the George Floyd situation, I mean, in our downtown square, and I'm not sure how this happened, but there's, one street has a huge
yeah,
Black Lives Matter right on the city street, which, again, it like, you can't even discuss this without people accusing you of being racist, but that is an organization, it's not really a concept,
yeah.
and so we live in a city where that is part of the infrastructure here. So,
Right.
but and at that time, Adam, you were a business owner,
Yeah.
um,
Still am.
and so was was your change in thinking s sort of causing a disconnect in the how like, you have to be one thing for the community, and then you have this other set of values and not that they're better or worse, they're just different, that are
Yeah.
starting to break away from the persona that
Yeah.
maybe you're supposed to have. I mean, is that
Yeah.
an accurate way to portray it?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That's what has happened, and it's why I had to step away. I I couldn't support the facade. I mean, I don't even think it's a facade for most of the people. It's
Sure.
just a like you said, it's a, um, social cause first, business second mentality in Bloomington, that
Mhm,
doesn't really work, and it's not logical, and it doesn't actually make any money, which is the point of business.
mhm.
Um,
Well, yeah, and if a business can't make money and sustain itself, then it's really not positioned to do good in the world. It
right.
ends up it can't put forth I'm not saying that a business shouldn't have a set of values that they want to live by and promote, and because that's their freedom and their right, and it makes the world a richer place. But if you can't have a business that sustains itself by good business practices, you can't do anything else anyway.
Yeah, and we're really, the idea is pushed to us from the bigger companies like the Googles of the world who have, so much profit that they can do whatever they want,
Mhm.
that you have to be, um, what is the ESG? Like, you have to promote
Oh,
something
the
first.
SDGs or what's yeah, the
Like
sustainable development goals, and then there's also the social equity kind of things. I don't
that's right,
even
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. All those things are, yeah, tertiary to running a business, but they're they're promoted as being the most important thing you can do, which, yeah, it just doesn't work, and that's why, yeah, you have to focus on profit so that you can then, yeah, contribute back to the community.
well,
I know
I
you're
got
not a big fan of Peter Thiel, but he covers this really, really well in Zero to One, which is a great business book.
well, I'm not yeah, tell me more about that. Leaving aside any opinions I might or might not have, because I'm at the point now where my brain is so wrecked by the constant onslaught of information that
Yeah.
can barely form a thought about
Well,
anyone.
I mean, yeah, and I've listened to a couple of the other episodes, and I just think that there's a really simple, solution to the problem that I think you have and many people have, which is just to not pay attention to any of that stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily like head in the sand because I get information all the time. I mean, you
Sure.
tell me stuff, friends tell me stuff, but I just don't check like the news or Twitter or really any. If someone tells me something and I need to like figure out if it's real or not, then I'll
Mhm. Mhm.
I'll I'll seek out a source, or a couple sources. A lot of times I'll use like, Perplexity or Grok to like, "Hey, is this real?" And then that'll send me to the links where I can say like, "Okay, this is just, nonsense." And,
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, I mean, I just I think that's like the basic thing is just like don't pay attention to that and just focus on the relationships that we have with real people in the real world. I was gonna mention earlier, like at the very beginning of the video blogging world, when people were posting videos online, and there was a group of, I mean, it was probably 200 people around the country and the world, even. There was some Australians. I have a friend in Denmark from this. We all were posting videos, and the videos that got the most popular, which was, like 100 views, um, were very, very minutia from someone's daily life. Like, oh, I saw this really interesting flower on my way to work, and I shot this little 10-second clip of it, and then gave it a thumbs up or something like that. Those were the bit videos that people enjoyed the most. The tiny moments of human life, and that's what we all thought video on the internet was going to be, which is
Oh,
so naive.
and it's but such a wonderful what a wonderful thing to be able to believe.
Yeah, yeah,
Now I think, and I think you are right about focusing on what's right in front of us on the important relationships. Where I get in trouble a little bit is thinking I need to do something because I see, and I've talked to some people, I see this rising threat, or I'm told the rising threat is of technocracy and tyranny. And, if I look at just the arc of things in my own life, yeah, there has not been a move toward the preservation of liberty, personal autonomy, freedoms. I mean, it's definitely in the other direction.
Mhm.
But again, the central question is how do you live? And so back to what you just said about don't pay attention. How are you living your life in that way? Tell me the things like what has changed in what you put your time and treasure toward as you've started to build your family and see that maybe, and it's not a head in the sand thing. I agree with you, but maybe it isn't the best thing to do to stay abreast of all these things that are being fed to us all the time, but rather to do something different.
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I spend most of my time just um, working on the things I care about, which are my kids' school. I volunteer there. I I'm on our church's facility committee. Um, I had breakfast with a friend this morning after I had a group meeting with some other friends. Um, and I try it when my business partner and I are working on things, even if we could do it remotely, we try to get together in person and
Mhm.
meet at a coffee shop or the mill or something. um,
This is
think
your new business partner for your new
uh
venture. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, medical gas. Just I thought we'd be talking more about that than
Medical gas. Well, we could. And we actually should talk about what it is because most people would not know what medical gas
well,
is.
I
It's
think
very
everyone knows
exciting.
what medical gas is. It's the most popular industry in the world, and
It,
everyone needs to know more about it.
is it being suppressed by the algorithm? Is that why we don't know more about medical gas, Adam?
Right, right, right. Um,
So it sounds to me
yeah,
like what you're doing is you're focusing your time and treasure on the institutions or the organizations you care about
yeah.
rather
I
than
mean,
getting
voting,
involved at the
right?
political level.
Yeah, they say vote with your feet, vote with your dollars, whatever. I mean, I do that all the time. I mean, honestly, this morning I wasn't going to mention this, but it's worth it. I I went to Target to get a microphone because I only have like a little lavalier mic, so I
Mhm.
thought, oh, I'm going to be on a podcast. I should get a cool mic, and I'll be able to use it for other stuff too. But I went in there and I had to get like dog food and other stuff, and I had a cart full of like 3 or 4 things. I went back there to get this mic, and this guy was helping someone else, and then he saw that I needed help, and he just walked into the back without talking to me, and then so I was standing there waiting for someone else to come. Like 2 or 3 people walked by with their, Target Pride shirts on and just literally wouldn't make eye contact with me. And so I just left. I left my cart there and I went to Kroger and then I went to Best Buy to get this. And I mean, that's just a little thing, but like if people don't pay attention to you, or if people don't want you to give you if they don't care about your money, then you don't need to give them money, right?
Right.
So I think we try to do that too when we choose where to get coffee. Even it's like
Yes.
you kind of have to support the businesses that will support you. The other thing that I wanted to mention is there's a book. Maybe we'll have to research this after, but Vonnegut wrote a book. It was Cat's Cradle, maybe. But there's one book where he opens every single chapter with like a news clip, and it's like, uh, once again, the world is under attack. This is the new thing you need to be afraid of. And I mean, it's not literally like that. It's just like he gives a good example of like this is the new thing that we all need to be afraid of. And then it goes on to just tell the rest of the story. It's a really nice like they call it like a clock in novel writing where it
Mhm.
ticks away. Um, and it just, I mean, that's always stuck with me. So anytime I see some new thing that we're all supposed to be afraid of, I'm like, oh, that's just like that thing that has been going on forever.
Oh, that's
So
a
they
wonderful
always,
ex it's a wonderful example of how art can inform, how we look at like, our real lives in a very productive way. Like, the whole God, there's so much to unpack about what you just said, the Target thing, which I wanna get back to, and then also the notion that, if you read things, and that's probably a fiction book, right, that you talk about?
yeah,
And I'm gonna
yeah,
look this up. But reading fiction to me, informs us so much about the human condition. I mean, I'm much more of a fiction reader than a nonfiction reader. I think it changes the way I look at things. I recently read a novel in draft form that changed my whole interaction with the internet
Hmm.
and how I look at the artificial world profoundly. And this is just a draft novel of. I had the guest on Ted Castronova, who he's never written fiction in his life. That storyline altered how I looked at things. But back to the Target thing, what I've noticed that I find one of the big things about our decline in society is the poor customer service that you get everywhere.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether it's the quality. I would say, like, it's the quality of people that are being hired, but I think it's just that there's no training or, and maybe it goes back to people how they raise their kids about making eye contact. Like, when I raised my son, I would make sure that he said thank you to everyone, and if he didn't have eye contact, I would just say, "Do it again with eye contact."
Yeah.
And so we have this whole world in which nobody gives a damn.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so what somebody didn't help you at Target? Like, that's the norm now. And I
Yeah. So
think it's
just go
great
places
that
where people are friendly. I mean,
yeah,
and if you can't find it, then I don't know.
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you. Go to Chick-fil-A. Probably that's like the only fast food place in town. But that's not true. There's plenty of like friendly people. You just have to find them. In fact, I mean the Kroger on the east side is full of great people. I always talk to this one woman at the checkout who she really likes trivia. She always asks me for like a trivia question. So that's great.
See,
And don't do self checkout. Just go talk to a human.
yes. I find I make that mistake too because sometimes I'm like, I just don't wanna make the effort because COVID changed everything like that. So let's go back to the COVID time when, things were starting to ramp up. Did you realize right away that something was a little off with the whole thing? Or when did you start becoming alarmed at the damage to society, or maybe that things weren't as they were telling us they were?
Um, it was pretty quick. I'd say within the first month or so, I
Mhm.
saw. So we were making a bunch of hand sanitizer, so that kept us very busy. And
Yeah, because you had to probably close down any kind of part of your business that was serving the public. Is that right?
yeah, I think we did. Yeah, I think we had to close. I think we were forced to close down like the bar, the tasting room.
Yeah.
So we did carry out stuff.
And yeah,
And
you did pivot because there seemed to be this giant need for hand sanitizer, which now I look back on and I just think, "Good God."
it
But
was
I
all
still had
bullshit.
it was
Yeah,
all bullshit. I have a huge bottle of your hand sanitizer,
I mean,
and
we
I was
still have
so
thousands of
grateful to
gallons.
have it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It makes really good lighter fluid, so I still have a closet full of, like, probably 200 gallons of it.
So if I wanna burn my house down because I'm sick of it, I can just use your hand sanitizer
I
to
guess.
do
Yeah,
it.
I was thinking of lighting your grill, but,
Well,
uh,
yeah, I don't grill that much. But anyway, so you're doing this whole thing in COVID. How old are your kids? What was the situation for your
oh,
your your
yeah, right.
family, and how did it impact you?
Yeah, so that was the year, my son would have been going into kindergarten that fall, and so, um,
And that would have been a
the
public school for you at that time.
yeah,
Well, still.
we're really close to, one of the better public schools here in this county, and, um, I think the school is still good, but the school board decided to close down everything and do
Mhm.
e-learning, um, and so, yeah, for kindergartner, that doesn't, make any sense.
Well, for any person, I would
Yeah,
argue that
right.
absolutely is harmful and injurious, and it was a cruel and terrible thing to do. And looking back, I want history will not be kind to that, even as right now, for the most part, people outside of our bubble who thought it was terrible, nobody seems to care. I just can't believe we did that to children.
Yeah, I know. Uh, so anyway, we put him we couldn't get into any other school that year, so we had to wait, but then the next year, we put him into a different school,
Mhm,
uh, and that was a school, the only one in town that did not lock down and were, mask optional, and the headmaster of that school got sued
mhm,
by the county, and they
because
tried
he
to shut
would
the school down.
because he wouldn't mask either. He would not mask
Yeah,
those kids.
yeah, and he stood up to it. They were dragged him through the mud, tried to do personal attacks on this guy who was just, I mean, I've gotten to know him, one of the, most, I would say, honest and um, just a good quality human
Oh,
that
he's
I've
a
ever
man of
met.
fine character and learning. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
scholar. And I just wanna say a little bit more about that school. May I?
Sure.
It's a charter school,
Hmm.
and so it's a public school, and when the move was made in this town to incorporate it or to get it going, there was this big brouhaha because it was a classical school. And so people were really against it as if it was some kind of crazy right-wing thing,
Yeah.
when a few years before, another charter school had been incorporated that embraced a different kind of ideal, and people were all for it. And so
Right.
the argument now that this charter school was gonna take money out of the other school, like, it was a completely, inconsistent set of, arguments that were
Yeah.
for both schools based on political motivations. And so by, sheer will, this school got incorporated, and it is a school that embraces a classical education. And, if you don't mind commenting on how great that kind of thing is for children and how I think it produces happy, well-adjusted, well-educated kids. If I had a kid now, that's where I would send him.
Yeah. I mean, we've been very pleasantly surprised with that place. I think when we first decided to send the kids there, the two main things were, yeah, they stayed open and they
Yeah.
don't use iPads, which, are two pretty, like, that's a low bar, I would say.
Not
But
anymore.
yeah,
I mean, because I think part of
yeah,
the thing of the pandemic was to get an iPad in every kid's hand. I mean, there's
right.
no
Right.
school that doesn't use them. It's sick. But
Yeah.
go on.
So what we've learned though is the curriculum is incredible. It's all based on, it's kind of like the way everyone used to learn. Um, Children were educated um, all around the country and maybe even all around the world, or at least in Europe, up until like the 70s, probably.
Mhm.
Or and it's based on, yeah, learning how to read with phonics, learning how to write in cursive, learning math, learning history, learning about how to be a good citizen through learning the history of your country, um, the basics of government, all these things that, we all. I think I learned all that stuff
Mhm.
too. Um, but now it's seen as like a weird radical idea because it is countercultural. It's just not that's not what they want to teach kids anymore.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, the kids have been incredible. Our dinner table conversations are great, and they really focus on not just um, educating the mind, but improving the hearts through the virtues. They teach these seven virtues, and the kids really focus on one virtue each month, and they get little badges if they're seen performing some act of virtue. And the front door was propped open accidentally, which was, basically the school safety officer gave him a reward for, I don't remember what the virtue was, but basically for catching that and saying like, oh, someone could get in here without having to,
Mhm.
ring the doorbell. And, I just said his name. I don't want to. Can you edit that out?
I'll do yes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're yeah.
Um,
If I can't, we'll just scrap the whole thing.
that's fine. Sorry.
It's no, don't. I mean, this is the beauty of this kind of thing. You can edit things out, and
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it. So,
So the virtue, yeah. Anyway, they get little awards for performing different acts of virtue throughout the month, and both of my children have gotten those, and they're very proud of them. And
but
it's a big deal.
but even to say what the virtues are and why virtue is important. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's just something that's completely lost now, and I
Right.
don't know if it's a chicken and egg thing. It probably is. It's just to me the degradation of our society, the move away from, and again, like I've said this before, 20 years ago, if I had heard myself saying these things, I would have been like, "Oh, for God's sakes,
I know. I know.
please." I just I've really changed my
Do you
morals,
ever
my values.
wonder? Do you ever wonder if it's just because we're older now and that we're just is it a cultural shift or is it us?
I
That's my
I
I always ask myself that. Like, am I more conservative because the world has shifted to this insane stuff, or is this like what my parents did too? I think it's probably a little bit of both.
it's probably a little bit of both, although, I think when I was your age, I hadn't made the full shift yet, and I wanna just say that when you say conservative, I don't I don't hear that as some kind of conservative politically. I just think conservative in just as a life thing, like, that
Mhm.
yeah, of course, that the basic things are important, that we should preserve them, conserve them.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a I Adam, I think it's probably a mixture of both, but, I think there's an acceleration
Mhm.
of the destruction of all of the things that enabled our society, our American experiment to thrive and to be possible. I think there's an acceleration, probably, I don't know since when, but certainly since the 60s, that is a
Yeah.
top down managed thing that's destroying our society and disorienting us. And
Yeah.
I think it's a tricky balance because I wanna be tolerant of all lifestyle choices. I don't really have a problem with what an individual chooses to do as long as it's not hurting anyone. But I have a problem when you're told to believe things that just aren't true and that are, destructive to society, like the breakup of the family, like anything goes. So, I think it's a mixture of both, for sure.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because
Yes.
I've had that. I go back and forth with actually what you just said about whether everyone should be allowed to do whatever they want as long as it's not hurting anyone else. So that second part of it is the part that's open for interpretation because I think what do you consider hurtful to other people? Because the metaphor that C.S. Lewis uses is there's imagine these ships that are sailing from one shore to another, and they're all going, in parallel paths. But one of the captain is like super drunk, and he just runs into the other ship. Or yeah, one of the captains is drunk and runs into the other ship, and it sinks both ships. There's there's certain things where you actually have to. I don't know if the right word is shame, but like there has to be some sort of agreement culturally to say this is an acceptable behavior and this isn't.
Mhm.
Otherwise, um, stuff can get out of hand and you start losing ships.
And stuff has gotten out of hand, and our ships are all in disrepair as a
Yeah.
result. Yeah, I agree with you on the shame part. How I think society needs to have a positive employment of shaming, and that's even to say that sounds controversial.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned C.S. Lewis. Tell me what you started reading more about him, probably to try to make sense of society and what your beliefs were, perhaps.
Uh, yeah, I did. So around, um, I don't know, it's probably 22 or 22, 2023. Um, I don't know what sparked this. It might have actually been Peter Thiel. This is another check mark in the column that he's not the devil. Um,
I'm not gonna say he is. I don't
I
honesty, I don't have an
he's
opinion.
he's 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 probably as controversial as Trump in many ways,
Sure.
but and I don't particularly know anything about his personal. I know just what everyone else does about the
Mhm,
guy, uh, but I do know that he's incredibly intelligent. And he was on a podcast once and started reciting some Bible verses and started explaining why he thought it was most logical that God created the universe and I had just never heard a sort of modernist intellectual person say that. So
mhm.
I think that was like another kind of crack in the armor, and because I'd been an atheist basically since 6th grade. Like
Wow.
grew up Catholic in Catholic school, but um, a friend of mine and I kind of decided together that we didn't believe what was going on in the Catholic mass,
Mhm.
especially like the transubstantiation and, the eating the
Right.
body of
Mhm.
Christ. Some of those, and in retrospect, a lot of it was around the ritual and the sort of top-down approach to religion that
Mhm.
Catholics have.
Mhm.
Uh, it wasn't necessarily the underlying truths that I think are correct in Catholic Christianity. But um, anyway, atheist, because I think it seemed to me that was like the smart person mentality.
Yep.
Everyone else was atheist, and it was almost like it would be silly to believe in God.
Sure.
Uh,
For artificial man in the sky, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. A smart person wouldn't.
right.
Yeah.
And then so then yeah, I would say even before 2020, 2019, I started um, looking into the origins of life, the origins of the universe, and started reading books about those things, um, and quickly realized that there weren't um, no one had figured that stuff out. It's we still have theories about the
Mhm.
Big Bang and um, abiogenesis, but none of those things have been proven.
Mhm.
Uh, and in fact, I would say some of them are sillier, much sillier than believing that a creator designed all this stuff. So,
Yeah. That's
um,
kinda
it-
where I fall on it. It just seems so far-fetched that there was nothing, and then all of a sudden there's something, but I'm not a
yeah,
physicist, but go on.
yeah. Anyway, back to C.S. Lewis. So, all of that stuff led to me reading a book called Theism and Humanism by guy's name's Balfour. And this was written over 100 years ago. It was given as a lecture in Scotland. It was one of the books that converted C.S. Lewis from atheism to Christianity. And so I read that first after hearing that that's how C.S. Lewis was converted.
Mhm.
I think, subconsciously I was just like, I want to believe.
Mhm.
Um, and so then I read that and I was bookmarking a lot of pages. I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. And then I read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which I think has probably converted more atheists than any other book
Mhm.
on the face of the
Mhm.
planet. It's just such a purely beautiful reason to believe because he just lays it out in a very a beautiful narrative, but also so much logic involved. He was just a masterful thinker and masterful author. So
Yes, hi
yeah,
his use of logic to bring somebody to have to come face to face with the mystery
right.
is really skillful.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, and his the other book that I really like of his is called Miracles, and um it's a really, really good takedown of the sort of naturalism point of view, which is that, nature created itself somehow.
Mhm.
Uh, there's tons and tons of logical flaws in that, and uh, so yeah, those two books I would say really opened my mind, and and then I literally started, like, going to churches. It's like, "Well, this all seems real." And, I would say the other part of that is I had some friends, who were Christian and just seemed to have, like, really figured it out. Like, "Oh, you have, like, a really nice life.
Mhm.
What's different between you and all these other friends I have who seem to be, like, floundering?" Um,
Mhm.
and that was the Venn diagram, I think, that they were all various forms of Christian.
Mhm.
Uh,
And was your wife also at the same time exploring these things, so as a family you were moving in that same direction?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she read the book that did it for her was called The Reason for God by Tim Keller, uh, who was a Presbyterian minister in New York City, and fantastic book too. I would say a very analogous book to Mere Christianity that was
Mhm.
written quite a bit later.
And so you start searching for a church, to put some structure around or some community around this.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
what
right.
and what were the things about where you landed? What were the I don't know, the structure of that church or the way they approached the subject that made it
Hmm.
more compelling than, say, some other churches here? Because I drive by a lot of churches here, and I've often thought that if I went back to church, I would go back to the church of my childhood because I find the ritual very, very comforting, which would
Yeah.
be Lutheran. But I don't wanna go to the Lutheran church here because it's flying a flag out
Yeah.
front that declares a political thing, and I want nothing to do with that. That's not why I'm going.
Yeah,
And
a lot
and
of
I
churches have been captured the same way that other institutions have been. It's really
Yeah,
a shame. But this one is, it's it's very straightforward, it's very simple, it's there is some ritual involved, which is kind of a nice,
I like ritual.
throwback to Catholic mass,
Mhm.
uh, but, the pastor doesn't wear, vestments or anything, so, yeah, I like it because, we have 2 pastors, and both of them are very good at explaining, the Bible and theology in general in a very, historically grounded way. So if he's talking about some, uh, Paul's letter to the Corinthians or something, he'll explain what was happening in Corinth at the time and
Mhm.
why this letter was sent and what was going on. Paul was in jail and all these things that I just didn't hear about.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe it's either that I didn't hear about it when I was growing up, or I didn't have the ears to hear.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, that was the hook for me. It's just I love history and I love
Mhm.
the way that it was all reasoned out. Um, and our one of our pastors is also a professor of biology at IU,
Well,
and
that's interesting.
does a really good job of just teaching. He's just a really
Mhm.
good lecturer.
Mhm.
So um, we've been going there for it'll be a year next month, I think. Um,
And how has it improved your life? When you started out looking at your friends and comparing, like, who has the life I kind of want, and they happen to be believers in
right.
something larger than themselves. Have you found that this affiliation has it shifted something in you and your family?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways. I'm incredibly grateful for it every day. And there's the community part is huge. Just having a core community that you can trust um, is incredibly important. But more than that, it's having having something outside yourself to base your meaning on. Um, it's I don't really think that you can do it without that. I don't think you could have a life of where you don't feel like you're building your house on sand in some way if you
Mhm.
don't have a belief in something bigger than yourself. And I think that's honestly the probably the root of all the things we've been talking about is
Mhm.
that belief in a higher power has disappeared from our culture, and so we're all trying to like self um,
Actualize, self-fulfill,
self-actualize, trying to do everything ourselves.
or we're
And
believing in a higher power that's a material thing. Like
yeah,
the corporation, the clicks on social media, the
sure,
whatever, instead of something lasting and eternal and
yeah,
universal.
or even something as nebulous as like human good or something
Mhm.
like promote improving the human race or uh, the way that we live here, or nature or the environment. All these things are yeah, like you said, corporeal, that just
Mhm.
they can go away, and they will. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, we're all gonna die. The world's gonna end. It's gonna get sucked into the sun, and then the heat death of the universe is gonna happen at some point. So,
Mhm.
what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen after that? Like,
So
at some
so
point,
it really does put in perspective, how do you wanna spend your, 80 years here?
right, right. And there's an option to live an eternal life that has been given to us by the creator of the universe. I mean, that sounds so insane. It just sounds insane coming out of my mouth, but
Right.
I believe it, and I honestly believe it's true. Um, and yeah, like you said, like 2 years ago, I would have said, Did I? That's not. I didn't say that. That's AI. AI, Adam.
I'm gonna sue somebody. I would never say that. So, we're getting to be toward the end of our time, and I guess the question is then, so now you've come to this place where I think you've arrived at that person you used to look at and say, what do they have going on that makes their life so together, right? I
Yeah.
mean, from my observation, you have this, you're a family man, you do right by the people around you, you're starting a business that will actually provide a real service to people and generate income for the good of your family and the community. um just if you had to tell somebody, here are the things you might want to do to live a good life in
Mm.
this craziness, unpack that a little bit, leave us with some wisdom.
Yeah. Well, I would say it all depends on context. So if you're single, get married and have kids. I think that's the number one thing.
Yeah,
Um, it's yeah, it's just the best. It's the best.
it's the best thing
Um,
I ever did in my I amen, I
yeah,
absolutely.
and to do that, I think you should probably find a church because that's where you're going to find a good life partner, probably. Other than a bar or an app, you're going to find people who probably are a better quality of character.
Mm.
You know, yeah, I don't know. As far as
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, I think they're
no, it's
just
all right. I mean, you told me you were going to ask me that. Um,
Well, you
yeah,
know what, Adam, to be fair, I think maybe you've already answered it. Like, just to not pay attention to all the stuff that is being thrust upon us and to just it sounds like you've embraced the values that made like my growing up and my life before I got immersed into all this nonsense better. You
yeah,
put one foot in front of the other, you do the right thing always, and if you don't, you make amends. You try to have some character to, little and this is just my little things matter. Like, and sometimes I get some of my wisdom from Peloton and Hallmark, which is, I'm like kind of laughing, but like I'll be working
that's
out in
great.
Peloton and the person's like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah, that's good. That's
that's
good.
really good. And I never thought I think you can pick up a little wisdom things everywhere, but I think it's the extension of yourself beyond selfish things.
Yeah,
Certainly
that's
you
true.
have to take care of yourself, but just to do the right thing and to not get swept up into the algorithm, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the biggest one is exploring the idea of a creator. If you don't believe, if you're an atheist like I was, um, I understand now why Christians are evangelists because
Hmm.
once you have understood what it is like to be a member of a healthy church and a child of God, you just want to tell everyone. You want everyone to feel how good it feels, how comfortable and how comforting and yeah, I mean, it's an incredible level of security that you cannot find in anything else in the world. So I mean, yeah, just read Mere Christianity. It's actually a super easy read,
Mhm.
uh, and just if you have questions about any of this stuff, just go ask someone at a church and just say like, what's how do you actually believe that this guy became God and was crucified? What is all that about? Like, it's just it sounds crazy. Tell me more about it.
Mhm.
You know, there's people in every church who have been where you are. I'm sure if you're an atheist. So,
Well, I
like
certainly
I
am
was.
not an atheist, and I really rejected atheism in the last, several years, and it's made my life better. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's a just the notion that maybe I have a soul
Hmm.
is a good starting point and a very
Yeah.
and a big comfort. So,
Right. Right. It is. It's the
well,
best.
Adam, you are one of my favorite people in
Uh,
this town, and I get so much out of meeting up with you and having coffee and seeing how you comport yourself and raise your family. it's a real inspiration. Plus, you're also super smart about all these other groovy things. So, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks, Joni. Take
All
care.
right. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.